thank you. Oh, you have questions for us, right?
I do have questions.
Great. I was going to ramble.
So what spurred the idea of changing the pardon process in California?
Yeah, so I think we were struggling with this idea for a really long time of like, what could we do? And we're seeing like waves and waves of Southeast Asian youth being funneled from prison to immigration jail to deportation, and it was really overwhelming. And so we started thinking, like, where did this problem actually start, and breaking down the different pieces of it. And I think with immigration, a lot of people, always think the problem starts in DC, or right now everyone's thinking immigration, the problem starts with Trump. And that's true, and there's plenty of blame to be had in DC. But the problem for PJ and for a lot of other people didn't start there, right? It started here in California. Their path to deportation started with their local jurisdictions and the criminal system here in California. And it was Democrats just as much as Republicans who fueled a prison building boom in California and funneled millions and millions of people into the prison system. So that's really where it started, and we can actually take it all apart right there, right? And part of the reason that's also inviting is because DC is a useless wasteland right now, right? So we're trying to find whatever solutions we can in our local communities and here in California. So we started to look at what are the different things we can do, and California's done a lot of amazing things to sort of help people who have criminal histories or who are incarcerated, and passed a series of bills and things like Prop 47, Prop 57, SB 260 to sort of reduce the prison population and for people to be able to vacate their convictions. One thing which is a really powerful authority the governor has is the authority to pardon someone with a conviction. And since PJ's conviction is from California, if he's granted a pardon, it basically removes the consequences of the conviction, including the immigration consequences. So PJ could go from facing deportation to becoming a green card holder again, to becoming a citizen, just like that, if the governor signs it. And the governor's been really great on a lot of things like parole, letting a lot of youth sentenced to prison get out, including granting PJ's parole request. So it seemed really natural that you can just go that extra step and just grant him a pardon. But we started advocating pardons a couple of years ago and applying for more and more clients to get pardons. Daniel Myers here, who one of our clients who got pardoned by Governor Brown a few months ago. So I'll let Angela talk a little bit about what a mess the pardon process is currently in California and how we're trying to fix it.
So the current.
Oh, sorry, I forgot your questions.
Yeah, no, it's fine. How do pardons currently work?
The pardon process in California has been around for a very long time, and previous to Governor Brown, the governors granted very few pardons. Governor Brown actually has granted more pardons than all previous governors in the last 100 years combined. So it's been a significant difference. New governors generally are very reluctant to grant pardons. They kind of worry about the political costs of doing that. And so we worry about future governors, whoever that might be, that they're going to be much more nervous about granting pardons. And right now, especially with the spate of raids, ICE raids in the Southeast Asian community, we need pardons now. We cannot wait. And we also need to make sure the pardon process is more transparent and accessible going forward in the future. So we want to make a systemic change. So the idea is that currently the pardon process is a black box. If you can get some help or you yourself can put together a pardon application, which is a pretty thick packet to put together, then you submit it and you don't know at all what's happened to it or who's investigating it, when you're going back, and especially if you're right now in a place where you could be picked up by ICE and deported, it's very stressful. So the idea is that we want to take the pardon decision and make it much more transparent. So the Board of Parole hearing, BPH, which is a commission within the California Department of Corrections within the state prison system, they currently are supposed to be the ones investigating pardon applications and providing recommendations to the governor's office. And then the governor, at his or her leisure, can issue pardons. The governor tends to issue pardons around Easter and Christmas. There's no legal requirement for the governor to limit it to those two times. I think it's like a separation of church and state issue. So that's what it's obvious. So our idea, and we can talk more about it in detail after Melanie asks me more questions, is to take it out of the Board of Parole Hearing and create a new commission, a Pardon and Commutations Commission. So that would both issue pardons and commutations. That's for folks who are currently incarcerated to be able to allow them to be released earlier if they've kind of shown rehabilitation. And we would like, ideally, for this panel, this new panel, to be comprised of not all law enforcement. Board of Parole Hearing is all law enforcement, and so it's an uphill battle to get any kind of a recommendation or investigation done, much less a positive recommendation.
What is the process of passing the pardon panel bill, and where are we in the process?
Sure, so I passed out a fact sheet, so for those who are wonky policy nerds, the details are in there. And so right now, the bill made it through, and you can see the list of supporters too. The bill made it through the Assembly, and it made it through one committee in the Senate. It's now in the Senate Appropriations Committee. Usually, for those who work in policy, you know that when you get stuck in an Appropriations Committee, when they say it costs too much money or whatever, a bill can die there. And usually to get a bill out of something like Senate Appropriations, you need to basically it's all politics. You need to get the head of the Senate, Tony Atkins, who represents San Diego. You also need to get Portantino, who's the chair of Appropriations Committee, to say, yeah, I have lots of discretion. I can decide that I'm going to move this bill out of Appropriations, and then move that to the full Senate, and then move that to the governor's desk. So basically we have three things to overcome. Get out of Senate Appropriations, the full Senate, and then to the governor's desk. So we're like, maybe 60% of the way there, 55% of the way there, and we're ramping up support, and this event's really helpful, this community turnout's helpful, because once we get to the governor's desk, that's going to be a really big push, trying to get the governor to agree to sign it. It's a big change that we're asking for.
What's the bill called?
AB 2845.
Cool. What can people in the room do to help pass this legislation?
Yeah, so there's a lot that can be done. Right now, the effort to pass pardons and this pardon and commutation reform is relatively small. It's about a dozen groups that have been involved in this effort, groups that are usually are mostly directly impacted folks. Asian Prisoner Support Committee is a big one, California Coalition of Women Prisoners, Legal Services of Prisoners and Children, the Asian Law Caucus, Ella Baker Center. A lot of these really amazing groups are involved right now. But we need to, in order to make this a bigger movement, in order to get the attention of the head of the Senate, to get the attention of the governor's office, and for them to feel the pressure to pass this bill, because we're not lobbyists that have money, right? We're just the only thing we have on our side is stories and a just cause, but we're not like your typical lobbyist in Sacramento. And so the only way to get them to kind of feel that pressure to sign this legislation, that I'm sure that there'll be criticisms of, because you kind of get into that world of the criminalization of immigrants, but we need community support. And so one thing we'll do is for the Facebook event for this, and also I think we probably collected some of your emails through the sign up over there. We'll follow up with just sample tweets. You can tweet at these are all very simple actions. You can tweet at the head of the Senate. You can tweet at the appropriations chair. We'll give you some sample tweets. You can adjust them, and those are actually quite useful. Sometimes people ask, like, what's the point of Twitter? It's useless. But actually, it is useful for elected officials. They pay close attention to who tweets at them. So it is actually quite useful getting those across. Also, if you represent an organization, we do have a dozen or so organizations right now in support. We could, in order to pass a bill like this, we probably need at least 50 plus organizations to signal their support. And so we'll follow up with a sample support letter that you can submit to us, that we will then submit to the Senate and the governor's office, so they know there's this wide breadth of community support.
Thank you. I think we have time for 2 questions. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. I'll say your question. I'll repeat it for everyone if everyone can't hear you.
Who are the legislators that brought your bill forward? Who were the sponsors of the bill?
Yeah, that's a great question. Assemblymember Rob Bonta, he's one of the more progressive members in the Senate, first Filipino-American assembly member, I believe, if I'm getting that right. He represents the East Bay, and he's actually been the author of a lot of our bills, including a voting rights legislation that Jonathan helped push through last year. So he's a real champion, but more importantly, he needs all of his colleagues to support the bill. That's a great question.
Okay. Last question. You got some.
How many people are sort of waiting for possible pardon from the government? Roughly.
Including U.S. citizens. I mean, God knows how many people California has convicted over the years. It's got to be
But how many
tens
are
of
in the
millions.
pipeline that
Yeah, for deportation specifically, we know that there are 2,000 Cambodians on the deportation list. There's about 8,000 to 9,000 Vietnamese refugees on the deportation list, and about 5,000 refugees from Laos facing deportation. And California is one of the biggest states for all of those communities.
I guess we have time for one more question. Okay. Well, thank you, Angela. Thank you.